March 22, 2015. 1 a.m. A barbecue in Field Store, Texas, is winding down when a heated argument erupts between a husband and wife. Neighbors actually come outside to check on the situation because the shouting is so intense. The wife, 32-year-old Danielle Sleeper, had planned to stay overnight with friends. But her husband Austin demands she come home immediately, along with their 3-year-old son. Against her wishes, Danielle leaves her own vehicle behind and gets into Austin's white Ford F-350 pickup truck. They drive the short distance to their home in Magnolia, Texas. By morning, Danielle Sleeper has vanished without a trace. Her purse, her cell phone, her medication, all gone. But here's what will absolutely shock you about this case. Austin Sleeper doesn't report his wife missing for over 24 hours. And when Danielle's family pressures him to finally file that report, the details he gives police don't add up. But the most chilling part, cell phone records would later reveal that Danielle's phone was still active until 3:12 a.m. that night, hours after Austin claimed they went to sleep. Then, 2 days after her disappearance, her phone mysteriously pinged a cell tower 2.5 miles from their home. Today, nearly 10.5 years later, Danielle Sleeper remains missing. No body has ever been found. No arrests have been made. But just 2 weeks ago, in June 2025, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office made a renewed public plea for information, suggesting they believe someone out there knows exactly what happened to Danielle. This is the story of a mother who disappeared at dawn, leaving behind 3 young sons and a family that refuses to give up searching for answers. Danielle Marie Sleeper was born to be a mother. At 32 years old, family always came first in her life. She lived in Magnolia, Texas, just an hour away from her parents' home, and she would frequently bring her children to visit. Her father, Charles Street, would later tell investigators that Danielle would always just stop by to say hello, and they would go get lunch together. As a stay-at-home mom, Danielle devoted herself entirely to raising her 3 sons. 2 boys were from her first marriage, and she had 1 son, 3-year-old Hagen, from her second marriage to Austin Sleeper. According to everyone who knew her, Danielle was the type of mother who would never abandon her children. She had a heart of gold and adored those boys more than anything in the world. But beneath the surface of what appeared to be a normal family life, there were troubling undercurrents that Danielle's friends and family had begun to notice. Cheryl Knoll, a close family friend and spokesperson for Danielle's family, would later reveal to investigators something that painted a concerning picture of Austin Sleeper's temperament. Austin was known to have what Cheryl described as a little bit of a temper. She told Dateline that there were times when Austin would get mad, and his frustration would make him even more angry, creating a cycle of escalating rage. On that Saturday afternoon, Danielle decided to attend a barbecue at a friend's home off Bowler Road near FM 1488 in Field Store, located in neighboring Waller County. She brought along 3-year-old Hagen, and according to Sergeant Paul Haas with the Homicide and Violent Crimes Unit of the Montgomery Police Department, Danielle was planning to make this a relaxing evening with friends. The barbecue was being held at what's described as a trailer park, and Danielle had originally planned to stay overnight with her friends. It was supposed to be a fun, stress-free evening away from home. But Austin Sleeper had other plans. Austin arrived at the barbecue separately, later in the evening. Almost immediately, tension began to build. According to multiple witnesses at the barbecue, Austin wanted Danielle to come home, but she wanted to stay and spend the night with their friends as originally planned. At exactly 1 a.m. on March 22nd, the disagreement between Austin and Danielle escalated into what police would later describe as a loud verbal argument. The shouting was so intense that it actually caused neighbors to come outside and check on the situation. Multiple people witnessed this confrontation, and everyone could see that Danielle was not happy about being forced to leave. But here's what makes this moment so critical to understanding Danielle's disappearance. Danielle had driven to the barbecue in her own vehicle. She had her own transportation. She had her own way home. but Austin insisted that she leave her car behind and come with him in his white 1996 Ford F-350 pickup truck. Think about that for a moment. If this was simply a disagreement about when to go home, why would Austin insist that Danielle abandon her own vehicle? Why couldn't she just drive herself home when she was ready? This detail would later become one of many red flags that investigators would focus on. Eventually, Danielle acquiesced to Austin's demands. She gathered up 3-year-old Hagen, left her vehicle at the barbecue location, and got into Austin's pickup truck. The three of them drove away together into the early morning darkness. It would be the last time anyone other than Danielle Sleeper would see Danielle alive. According to Danielle Sleeper's account to police, the family arrived home and went to sleep. He claims that the next morning he woke up and went to his father's house to drop off 3-year-old Hagen before meeting with friends to run errands. But here's where Austin's story starts to fall apart under scrutiny. While he was supposedly running these errands, Austin made a trip back to the barbecue location to pick up Danielle's vehicle that had been left behind the night before. He then asked his mother to pick up Hagen to take him to visit her home in Louisiana the next day. When Austin finally returned home, he told police that all the doors to the house were locked, but Danielle was nowhere to be found. According to his account, she had simply vanished while he was out. Now here's what should immediately strike you as strange about this timeline. Austin is claiming that his wife disappeared from their locked home while he was out running errands, but instead of immediately calling police, instead of frantically searching for her, instead of alerting neighbors or family members, Danielle Sleeper did absolutely nothing. Hours passed. Danielle's family became increasingly worried when they couldn't reach her. You have to understand, this was completely out of character for Danielle. She was in constant contact with her family. She would never go hours without checking in, especially when it came to her children. Danielle's sister Tana decided to go check on her. When she arrived at the house, what she found would raise even more suspicions about Austin's behavior. Tana noticed fresh scratches on top of Austin's head. Their son Hagen wasn't running around and playing like he normally would, but most puzzling of all, Austin still hadn't reported Danielle missing. Tana would later tell investigators that Austin kept saying Danielle had run off and that she would probably be back in a few days. But Tana knew this wasn't right. She kept telling Austin that something was wrong, that this wasn't like Danielle at all. It wasn't until March 23rd, over 24 hours after Danielle had supposedly disappeared, that Austin finally filed a missing person report. And according to Sergeant Haas, Austin only filed the report after heavy suggestions from family. In other words, Danielle's family had to pressure Austin into reporting his own wife missing. When Montgomery County Police finally began investigating Danielle's disappearance on March 23rd, what they discovered at the Sleeper home would turn this missing person case into something much more serious. Officers conducted a thorough search of the residence and made several troubling discoveries. Danielle's purse was missing. Her cell phone was gone. Her keys were nowhere to be found. Most significantly, her medication was also missing. This detail is crucial because it suggests that either Danielle left voluntarily and took these items with her, or someone wanted it to appear that way. But here's what investigators found most disturbing. There were no clues at the scene whatsoever. Sergeant Haas told reporters that the complete absence of any evidence made the investigation extremely difficult from the very beginning. The lack of evidence was so concerning that investigators quickly escalated their response. Within days of the missing person report being filed, Montgomery County detectives secured a search warrant that authorized them to look for implements and instruments used in the commission of a criminal offense of murder and slash or aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Let that sink in for a moment. Less than a week after Danielle was reported missing, investigators were already searching for evidence of murder and assault. This wasn't a case of a woman who had simply walked away from her life. Law enforcement clearly suspected foul play from the very beginning. Even though Danielle's physical phone was never found, investigators were able to obtain her phone records from the service provider. What they discovered would completely contradict Austin's timeline of events. The record showed that there were numerous text messages and phone activity on Danielle's phone continuing until 3:12 a.m. on the morning of March 22nd. Remember, Austin had claimed that they arrived home from the barbecue and went to sleep. But Danielle's phone was actively being used until after 3 a.m. What was Danielle doing during those hours? Who was she communicating with? Was she trying to reach out for help? These are questions that have haunted investigators for nearly a decade. But perhaps even more disturbing is what happened to Danielle's phone after that final activity at 3:12 a.m. The phone went silent for 2 full days. Then, on March 24th, 2 days after Danielle's disappearance, her phone mysteriously came back online and pinged a cell tower located 2.5 miles away from the Sleeper home. Think about the implications of this. Someone had Danielle's phone and turned it on 2 days after she disappeared, at a location that was miles away from where she was last seen. Was this Danielle herself, trying to send a signal? Or was someone else using her phone, perhaps trying to create a false trail? While investigators were analyzing evidence and following leads, Danielle's family launched their own desperate search effort. Her parents, Dinah and Chuck Street, barely slept in the months following their daughter's disappearance. According to detailed reporting from KHOU, Danielle's parents spent their days in fields and farmlands with search crews, riding all-terrain vehicles through rough terrain and scouring ponds on kayaks. They were determined to find their daughter, no matter what it took. The family spent thousands of their own dollars printing and mailing missing person flyers to homes throughout Magnolia and surrounding towns, pleading with anyone who might have information to contact police. They organized volunteer search parties. They contacted Texas EquuSearch, a well-known local search and rescue organization, who came out to assist in the effort. Despite all of these extensive search efforts, nothing was found. No trace of Danielle. No clues about what might have happened to her. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Despite extensive investigations by the Montgomery County Police Department's Homicide and Violent Crimes Unit, despite hundreds of hours of volunteer search efforts, despite following up on every lead that came in, Danielle Sleeper's case eventually went cold. But then in 2021, something significant happened that brought renewed attention to Danielle's case. Montgomery County launched something called the Cold Case Warm-Up Initiative, a public awareness campaign designed to solicit new leads for unsolved crimes. In May 2021, an anonymous donor stepped forward and increased the reward for information in Danielle's case to an unprecedented $21,000. This wasn't just a small increase. This was a substantial reward that demonstrated someone's serious commitment to finding answers. And now, here's the most recent development that suggests this case is far from closed. Just 2 weeks ago, in June 2025, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit made another renewed public plea for information about Danielle's disappearance. This isn't just a routine annual appeal. Law enforcement agencies don't typically issue new public pleas for decade-old cases unless they have reason to believe that new information might be available or that new investigative techniques might yield results. Today, nearly 10.5 years after Danielle Sleeper vanished, her case remains officially open and under active investigation. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit continues to follow up on tips and leads, hoping that advances in technology or a witness finally coming forward will provide the breakthrough they need. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office continues to believe that someone in the community has information that could solve this case. Their message is clear. Every detail matters. Your information, no matter how small, could help solve this cold case. If you have any information about Danielle Sleeper's disappearance, please contact the Montgomery County Cold Case Unit at 936-760-5820. You can also submit anonymous tips to Crime Stoppers at 1-800-392-STOP or online at montgomerycountycrimestoppers.org. Danielle Sleeper was a devoted mother who loved her children more than anything in the world. She deserves justice. Her family deserves answers. And the truth, no matter how long it takes to emerge, will eventually come to light. The next chapter in Danielle's story is waiting to be written. It may be written by someone reading this right now, someone who finally decides that 10.5 years of silence is long enough. The time for the truth is now. Time for